Welcome to the Elevating Funeral Service podcast. If you want to run a successful funeral home, cemetery, or pet cremation service, you don't have to be the one that has the lowest price. You do need to be the one that offers the most value, provides the best customer experience, and clearly communicates that in your marketing. On this weekly podcast, Ellery and Welton will show easy ways to demonstrate value to families and create differentiation that helps you stand out from the competition. Hey everybody, on today's episode of Elevating Funeral Service podcast, we're going to be talking about a SWOT analysis. Basically, what we're going to do is to get into what it is, why you should be doing it in your funeral home, and some of the things that you should look at kind of externally and internally. So, Welton, how are you doing today?
Pretty awesome.
Good.
As always, just enjoying.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe that January is almost over.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the reason I say that in the context of this episode is because a week ago, we talked about things that funeral homeowners should be doing in 2021. So, it's a new year, do some new things, change things up, right? Set yourself up for success. Right. And I can't believe that we're almost at the end of January already. And, all of the things that I wanted to plan for, we're implementing, we're already seeing results for it. And so it makes me wish that I had done even more planning in the fall, because we even have more results. Yeah. So what this episode, what we're going to talk about is a SWOT analysis, and we'll get into kind of what it is. But what I really want to do is I really want to talk about it more from a high level of a funeral home working on their business, not just in their business. Okay. Exactly. And how this tool, this simple tool that you can do with a piece of paper and a pen or a whiteboard, you can do it on your own, or you can do it with friends or colleagues. But it's a really important way for you to kind of ascertain what's going on in your business and around your business, and then how you can take that and kind of move forward and grow your business. So why don't we just start, Welton? Why don't you just maybe explain what a SWOT analysis is, and then kind of what the acronym is, and we'll go from there.
Right. So SWOT analysis is just a very simple, right, but useful framework for analyzing your firm's strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So basically, in layman terms, kind of help you build on, really build on what you're doing well already. That's a strength part. And to address, what you're lacking, that's your weakness. And then to minimize risk, those are, the threats, but really is to find, hey, what are some of these opportunities that you can take advantage of? So it's a fun exercise to go through.
The way I've always looked at the SWOT analysis, Welton, is in business, and we do it annually. But if I were to start a business and I write a business plan, the business plan is another name for a SWOT analysis. Right. Yeah. If you're going to an investor, if you're coming to a banker for money or whoever, they're going to say, okay, what's your business? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Who are your competitors? What are the threats? What are the external forces you can't control? All those things. So I like to think of it like a business plan that you do annually.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. So it's a business plan that you do annually. So in the framework of a funeral home, so I'm a funeral director. Business is okay. I'm not really losing market share. I'm not really gaining market share. I sit down and I'm going to do a SWOT analysis. What am I trying to do here? What am I trying to find opportunities to grow? Am I trying to find areas to mitigate risk? I mean, we're probably trying to do all those things, right?
All of the above.
But what would you say would be kind of the first step? So the funeral director's ready to do this. They get a piece of paper out. They just start listing out what they're strong at.
Right. I will start definitely with the S, which are the strength. And you got to be celebrating what your strengths are. And very often you don't even know what your strengths are, right? So for example, you have, one of the best customer service. Your funeral directors are all highly trained, right? They are very engaged employees, right? Great reputation, brand. But really it's to kind of go over and really celebrate, in the past 20 years, what you have built on. When we went through that exercise, end of last year, it's as a team, all the leadership team we gathered, after we all list out our own strength from each point of view, and then we compared the answers. But it's wow, I really can cherish what we actually built in the last few years, which is amazing to even just celebrate that.
That's awesome. What
Right.
are some of the things other than like a staff or service, do you
Mhm.
think they would put in the S column?
Right. So for example, it could be as simple as, right, they have on-site crematory. That's their strength,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And could be, hey, they have like modern facility, large facility. They have great aftercare program, good backlog of pre-needs,
Right.
great online reputation. Just right, really list out how, right, how you're different as well compared to your competitors. That's really is how are you different.
Yeah, that was my point. So I'm thinking about it like, and I know how we do it internally, but from a funeral director or funeral homeowner's standpoint,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it from the, like, if you said, okay, what are your strengths? If you flip that around and said, okay, if somebody said, tell us how you're better,
Yeah.
right? Or tell us how you're different than the
Exactly.
competitor down the street. Like that is
Right.
what you would want to list, right? Like,
Exactly.
let's say
Right.
that your location's on the busiest road in the area,
Mhm.
right? That's a
Right.
strength.
Right.
Yeah, so that's great. That's great. And what you're looking for in there is you're looking for things like you said to build off of, right?
Mhm.
And then you're also looking for things that you can market,
Right. Your
right?
unique selling proposition, right? Very often when we ask funeral directors, say, how are you different? It hasn't been a while they even thought about how they're different.
Right.
But through this exercise, at least you know how you are different.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's a really, really good point. Okay, so let's move on to the W. So
Mhm.
this kind of reminds me one time I was in a job interview when I was super young, and the guy's like, "Tell me about your weakness." And I sat there and I couldn't think of a single one, Welton.
Right. Mhm.
And I don't know if that made me narcissistic or overly
Mhm.
optimistic, but I could not think of a single thing to say.
Right.
And this is the column that you have to get brutally honest
Oh yeah, super honest.
about, right? You got to say, where do we fall off?
Right.
You're not being judged by anybody. This is
Mhm.
internal, right? This is you
Right.
and a piece of paper, you and your colleagues. But
Mhm.
where are we weak at?
Right.
And what are some of the things that a funeral
Yeah.
home might list that they're weak
Yeah.
at?
I think good thing here is if they do track numbers, I would definitely start looking at numbers. For example, right? You guys get so many X amount of phone calls to come in, but only X amount of those turn into right appointments, for example, or look at the averages, things like that. Is first of all, if there's any KPIs that you guys do track, hopefully you guys are tracking some numbers. It's a good time to look at these numbers and see where are rooms for improvement. And that's why I hate to call it weakness. It's not weakness. It's like, hey, what are some of these areas we can improve on? And looking at the metrics, numbers don't lie. Those are the easy, low-hanging fruit to start out with first.
Yeah, that's good. For those that are not familiar, KPIs, key performance indicators, basically they're benchmarks where you want to be, where you think you need to be. That kind of can get into some more planning that, I mean, quite often a lot of funeral homes don't do because
Yeah.
they're just busy, right? They're just
Mhm. Yeah.
running their business. So that goes back to what I said in the beginning, that a SWOT analysis really is where you pause and take time to work on the business, not in the business. And it's very difficult to do, right? I mean,
Right.
even us, we're going 100 miles an hour right now.
Right.
It's hard to stop and pause
Right.
and really kind of think about it. So this is something that you probably don't want to do in between embalming,
No.
right? Or between calls.
Nope.
I think this is what you want to do. Like,
No.
take a Saturday,
Mhm.
go to the lake,
Yeah.
sit there and think about this,
Mhm.
go,
Right.
spend some time by yourself. For me, I think some of the weaknesses I think that a lot of funeral homes could probably admit to, like they're weak on the phone. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like
Right.
they're not real good answering the phone in the context of like winning cremation shoppers, right?
Mhm.
Like digging for more information,
Right.
as opposed to just being
Right.
friendly on the phone for a death call and being transactional when somebody asks for a price or giving the price or hanging up, et cetera.
Right.
So I would look at things on the weakness column, like what are the things that are little but make a big difference,
Oh yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like if you're weak in those areas, that's important to identify because those are easy wins. So those, if you can turn it around,
Right.
those are small changes that have a big impact,
Right.
right? So let's say that you get, marginally better answering the phone and you
Mhm.
pick up 2 more calls a month, that's 24 more calls a year. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
that it matters, right? Like that
Mhm.
stuff really adds up. And the only way you really think about those things is by doing the SWOT analysis. Okay, so you mentioned this before, so I'll just throw this out there that on the SWOT analysis, SWOT, the S and W, the strengths and weaknesses are internal. Those are
Right.
things you can control, right? You can get better answering the phone, right? You can get better at marketing. You can get better at all that stuff there. And the O and the T are external. Those are things you can't control.
Yeah.
One are the opportunities, and the second one is the threats. So let's go to the third column, right? Let's go to the O. What are some of the opportunities?
Right. So for example, right, if you know catering is a big deal, right? That's how you could be different compared to your competitors. That's a opportunity for you to grow into, right? Pet cremation, right? If you know that you could be better in doing more celebration life celebration, right? Those are opportunities for you to gain into.
I like that because when we look at growing a business, and I've read countless business books, and the one thing I've always thought about growing a business, like if I was brought in to join a company and
Mhm,
turn the company around,
mhm,
usually when that happens is you're going to start cutting expenses, right? You're going to
right.
trim the fat, and then
Yeah.
you're going to look for opportunities,
Yeah.
right? Like where are the opportunities?
Mhm,
The opportunities, obviously, we need to grow our customer base, right?
mhm,
But also, what can we sell to our existing base?
right.
So with funeral homes, it might be how can I add more value to each family, right? To
Mhm,
increase my per funeral volume, my per
right.
case dollar
Mhm,
amount, right?
right.
Increase the ticket price, if you will.
Mhm,
Um, and then also like where else can we get more exposure, where else can we
right.
get more calls? So I love the idea of doing the pet cremation.
Mhm,
We had John McQueen on back in the
that's right.
summer, and just a great guy, great brand, and he talked a lot about he had this wonderfully successful funeral home, right? And then he saw an opportunity to open up a direct cremation business to
Right.
serve that into the market,
Right.
and they opened up a pet cremation to serve that into the market.
Mhm,
And so he's able to scale horizontally, right,
right.
and then into different verticals. And
Right.
so um, if you don't really sit down and think about that and intentionally try to identify,
Right.
right, all the different ways that you can add revenue, either add more calls, right,
Mhm,
or add revenue to your calls, right, and you
right.
can do this as simple as just having everybody in the funeral home get around the table one day.
Right.
It's everybody get a piece of paper, and for the next 5 minutes, I want everyone
Yeah.
just to not say a word, write
Mhm,
down every way you think we can bring in revenue to this funeral home.
mhm, right.
Just those kind of sessions in there where you're just brainstorming, throwing ideas out there, and
Yeah.
then let them filter out and see what's there. So
Right.
yeah, awesome. Okay, so then the threats, and this is really, to me, I would look at this like risk, like
Oh yeah.
where am I vulnerable?
Oh yeah.
Like what can come in here and kind of eat my lunch? I wrote an article back in 2018 that got probably more engagement than anything I've ever posted online, but it talked about funeral homes and most businesses not really paying attention to what's coming,
No.
right? Like they're just looking at today.
Yeah.
They might be looking at tomorrow, but what they're not looking at, someone right there now is trying to take everything away from you, right? Someone wants to be the ring, ring, ring
Yeah.
marketing,
Yeah. Yeah. This is how
right?
do you put yourself out of business?
That's exactly right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so what are the threats? So let's talk about that. And this could be geographical, and it could be financial. But let's say it's geographical, and you're the only competitor in town. Life is great,
Yeah.
you know. But there's land around, and someone can come put
That's
up a funeral home, and if
that's
it's
right.
so good for you,
Yeah.
believe me, someone else is looking at that
Oh yeah.
as well.
Right.
So why don't you share, Weldon, what you think
Yeah.
some of the threats are that a funeral home should pay attention to?
Right. So definitely is your competitors, right? Your existing competitors and also potentially new competitors coming into the market. Could be discount brands that might be popping up, right? And you want to make sure that you're monitoring these threats. So if you know they're coming into the market soon, then you better right get ready for it. Or this is a potential threat, knowing in other markets that discount brands are going in, and bet you this discount brand will come in. Do you now start to create one already so that way they don't even bother come in? Basically, you're putting a shield so they don't even come in. Or it could be corporate owned funeral homes typically got a little bit more money So, right. So just quite a bit of threats. And obviously the other big threat is cremation rate is going up. That's really, there's no way it's going to go down. Right? With cremation on the rise, that's just a broad industry mega trend. Right? There's no way that, right, even if you're enjoying 40% cremation rate in your local market right now, bet you it's going to go up. And that's something you cannot control.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I like the idea. I think one, the existential threat is cremation, right? That's just never going away. The discount competitors, when I look at a funeral home in a town of, 50,000 people, there's 2, 3 funeral homes and there's not really a discount cremation, it's coming.
Yeah,
The
that's coming.
cost to entry is so low.
Yeah.
In some states, the licensing barrier is so
Yeah.
low or non-existent, right? There's
Yeah.
some states it's the wild, wild
Yeah.
west.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to rent a 1,500 square foot storefront, right? I can buy Google AdWords and start siphoning off
Yeah.
calls tonight,
Easy.
right? Like it's really, really, you can be disrupted really quickly where 30 years ago, it was capital intensive to build a funeral home, to buy one, right? You had a rolling stock, you had to get a building, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more to it. Geez, I mean, somebody get a website, throw Google AdWords up, they start siphoning off calls, and that family that's calling for a direct cremation, they see your ad, they get on your website, they don't care that you've not been there 80 years, right? So that is a really big threat to that. And I think about the threat column. When we write out threats, I like to think about that, like, what would I do today if that threat materialized? Right? Like, what would I do today if I looked out my window and a direct cremation company opened up across that street?
Yeah. Right.
I'd be like, okay, you got to react. So how would you do it? So if you know, and that scares the crap out of you, I like to try to mitigate that by having some kind of a plan.
Yeah.
For example, as a tech company, the idea of our servers failing and us losing data and all that stuff scares me so bad that we spend a lot of time with a disaster recovery plan. Like we know what happens if, the crap hits the fan, we know we're protected because we've got stuff in place. I would think that if it's a real threat, something like a discount cremation brand, I would spend some time studying that market, right? I'd spend some time thinking, okay, if it's appealing enough for someone else to come in here and have just a moderate chance of success, then it's probably feasible for you to do it. And if no one else has done it, you probably should do it. Okay. And so I might think about that threat in the way I might think about like a business plan. Like, okay, I mean, should we do this? Should we not do this? Let's have this conversation now, as opposed to being reactive. Right. I mean, I can tell you stories of towns I've seen where, there's been an incumbent, right? The runaway winner, and somebody has come in that was scrappy, low overhead. They're not giving the cremation away, but they're just able to do it for less money and they still remain profitable. And then without really paying attention, a couple years later, this firm's doing 300 calls, and the firm that wasn't really paying attention, the incumbent, is looking around saying, what the crap just happened? And then it's almost too late, right? So when you do a SWOT analysis and you think about those threats and you identify that, if you and they're real, if you don't react, if you don't do anything about them now, then you really can't blame anybody but yourself later on down the road, right? Because you even had enough foresight to know, you know what I mean, that it was coming. So I would think that cremation, obviously, discount brands coming into your area. Also a huge threat that I don't think many funeral homes think about is your staff leaving. Right? Like, I mean, if you're not, talent is hard to find, right? If you're not, making that, I mean, so if you're not taking care of your employees, they will leave. And that is a major threat.
That's a huge threat.
Yeah.
They might be even exiting off the death care industry too, because it's like 24/7 job.
Yeah. I mean, without getting into the whole, wage wars and all that thing, just think about that. If your best funeral director left right now, how hard would it be to replace her or him? Right. I mean, you probably will wish you could retroactively, do something different, to maybe get them to stay. And obviously some is out of your control, right? But a lot of it is in our control. So Well, this has been fun, Welton. I think I love talking about this stuff because I
Yeah.
love business and I love kind of getting into the weeds, and I
Mhm.
love being able to control a lot of things.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And I've always been able to control our business just by looking at numbers, knowing where we're at, spending the time. I'm a bit of a geek, so I like it.
Yeah.
But if you don't like it, listen, get with another business mentor. Get with anybody. Even I encourage you just to get with your staff
Yeah.
and just sit around the
Exactly.
table,
Yeah.
buy lunch for them, sit on the table and say, okay, we have a slow afternoon. We're going to do an exercise, right?
Yeah.
It's called SWOT. I
Mhm.
want us to all talk about, okay, so everybody tell us what our strengths are. And it's amazing
Yeah.
how much people are willing to participate in
Right.
that, how much, and they're going to feel better
Oh yeah.
because they see you as the owner,
Mhm.
working on the business,
Right.
right? Which gives
Yeah.
them security.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, this really won't take a lot of time. Like an hour, you'll get a lot out of it. It's really in the beginning, it won't be a lot of time.
yeah.
Even just over lunchtime, shut down everything, just really just go through exercise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For those of you listening, I would love to know, Well, and I would both love to know if you have done these SWOT analyses, if you do it annually, or have you ever done it? Which would be really fun, is if you haven't done it and then you do it and then you let us know how it went.
Right.
I would love to actually invite you to come on the episode. Maybe, well,
Yeah.
maybe we can do a follow-up
That'd be
episode if we
fun.
can find one or two funeral homes that have
Mhm.
done it, or that
Right.
that are doing it maybe after they listen to this episode, and then tell us how it goes. I'd be really interested to see how
Mhm.
enlightened they are.
Oh yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah, like what would they find out that they are not thinking about, kind of by going through that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That'll be fun.
All right, well, we'll wrap this one up. We've got a couple episodes coming up the next couple weeks with some really cool topics. I think you
Mhm.
guys will find a lot of value in that.
Oh, yeah.
As always, if you have found value in the podcast, Welton and I would certainly appreciate it, and ask you, if you would, to go to Spotify or iTunes, wherever you listen, and leave a review. That helps us to kind of be, to surface higher in the podcast, right? So more people will find out about us. And as always, I'm Ellery at aftercare.com. That's Welton at ringringmarketing.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. That when we get emails or comments on social media about how people like the podcast, or even suggestions, that's really gratifying to me. So
Yeah,
makes it
it
all
is.
worth it. So, okay, cool. All right. So until next time, we appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.